Welcome to this explainer. We're going to deconstruct a classic NPPE style question today, one that really gets into a super important area of Canadian law for professionals. Let's break it down together, step by step.
Okay, let's get right into it. So here's the scenario. An owner puts a project out for tender. They get all the bids back, but then they reject the lowest one, even though that bid followed all the rules. And the reason? It's some vague best value idea that was never, ever mentioned in the original tender documents. So you can imagine, the bidder who submitted that lowest bid is pretty upset and decides to sue. The big question for us is, what's the core legal principle at play here? What's their lawsuit actually about? Now, before we even peek at the multiple choice options, let's figure out what this question is really trying to test. You might think it's just about general fairness, but nope. It's actually a laser-focused question on a very specific part of Canadian contract law, the part that governs the entire bidding process. So, the whole thing hinges on this one critical concept called Contract A. This is the key that unlocks the entire question. The moment a bidder submits a bid that follows all the rules, a compliant bid, a unique, legally binding contract is automatically created between them and the owner. And this contract, Contract A, it's not about the actual project work. It's all about the rules of the bidding contest itself. This idea is the bedrock of what's known as the two-contract process. And the easiest way to think about it is like this. Contract A is the rulebook for the competition. It makes sure everybody's treated fairly and judged on the criteria that were published from the start. Contract B, well, that's the grand prize. That's the actual contract to build the project, and it only goes to the winner of that fair competition. And this is what really separates the two. You see, every single bidder who hands in a compliant bid gets their own separate Contract A with the owner. But only one, just one, is going to win and get to sign Contract B. The legal fight in our scenario? It's all happening right there, in that Contract A stage. You know, one of the best ways to be sure you've got the right answer on the NPPE is to know exactly why the wrong answers are wrong. These other options aren't just random. They are designed as very specific traps to catch common misunderstandings. So let's walk through them.
First up, let's look at the trap hiding in option A. It suggests the owner can be subjective because the final project contract B, would let them. And, on the surface, that kind of sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
And boom, there it is. This is probably the most common trap people fall into. The argument is about the fairness of the bidding process. At this point in the story, Contract B, the actual project contract, hasn't even been awarded. It doesn't even exist yet, so there's no way any of its terms could possibly apply to how the bidding contest was run. Okay, next up, option C. This one brings up a legal term, unjust enrichment, and suggests the owner got an unfair benefit just by seeing the bidder's prices.
Yeah, this is a classic misapplication. Unjust enrichment is a real legal concept for sure, but it's not the main problem here. The owner didn't steal the bidder's pricing to give it to someone else or anything like that. They just rejected the bid unfairly. The heart of the problem is the violation of a fair process, not the misuse of information.
And finally, we've got option D, which mentions promissory estoppel. This is a legal principle where a promise can be enforced by law even if it's not part of a formal contract.
Now, this is a really subtle trap because you could argue that the tender call is a promise of a fair process, but the Canadian courts have created a much stronger, much more specific legal framework for this exact situation, and that's the Contract A/Contract B analysis. The existence of Contract A is the direct, powerful principle that applies here, which makes it a way better answer than the more general idea of promissory estoppel. So, after knocking out all the wrong answers, we're left with the only one that perfectly fits the facts, option B. The owner breached Contract A because they used evaluation criteria that were never disclosed.
So let's just quickly nail down why this is the right answer. The owner put out a tender, creating a Contract A with every compliant bidder. A fundamental unspoken rule of that contract is the duty to be fair. By bringing in a secret, hidden criterion, this best value thing, the owner broke the rules of the contest they themselves created. That is a textbook breach of Contract A.
Okay, to make sure this all sticks, let's do a quick recap of the key terms. A tender is just the invitation to bid. A compliant bid is one that follows all the rules. Contract A is that all-important automatic contract about the fairness of the process. And undisclosed criteria? Well, those are the secret rules that got the owner into hot water in our scenario. So, what's the big takeaway here? If you remember just one thing, make it this. Because of Contract A, the bidding process isn't just a casual invitation, it's a legally binding agreement. Fairness isn't just a nice idea, it's an enforceable duty.
And that wraps up our breakdown. It really leaves us with a practical question for our own careers, right? When you're the one writing or reviewing tender documents, are you being crystal clear about every single evaluation criterion? Because that's how you protect your organization from a costly and totally avoidable breach of Contract A. Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.